Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've had quite a few people asking about general strategy recently, so for this video I wanted to focus a bit more on how I approach escalation as a game mode and some of the decisions I'm making throughout the round. So for those of you who are new to the channel, I'm by no means a pro player, but I do enjoy breaking down my thought processes and showing how I stay effective while still playing casually and having fun. So if you're an after-work gamer, a weekend warrior, or someone who just wants to improve without treating Battlefield like a second job, hopefully you'll find something useful here. Today's match in Escalation on Siege of Cairo, we finished with 49 kills, 11 deaths, and 17 objective captures. It ends up being a really close game where we take control, scoring the first 2 points, but ultimately come up short. Honestly, that makes this a great example because it shows that even when you have a strong individual round, understanding the momentum, rotations, and objective control is what actually decides the match. So as we go through the gameplay, I'll point out why I'm pushing certain objectives, how I'm deciding where to rotate next, and some of the common mistakes I see players make in Escalation. So with that said, let's jump into the round. So for this round, we're using the Engineer class. I always like rocking Engineer on Siege of Cairo just with all the tank gameplay. I've actually switched my secondary over to the VZ-61, still using the RPGs, the mines, the frag grenades, and the melee knife. For the gun today, I'm using the VCR-2, specifically using the 2.5x scope, the violet laser, flash hider, the basic barrel, stubby grip, 30 round fast magazine, and the standard ammunition. Before I start jumping into the live gameplay, I'll first briefly outline several of my main strategies and tips for escalation. At the end, we'll summarize what went well and why we likely lost. So, tip 1, early momentum matters. One thing I prioritize in escalation is getting involved immediately. Early captures are worth a lot because they establish map control and create that early momentum. Even if you're not getting kills, these first few objectives can set the pace for the rest of the match, and it's important to offset the enemy's early captures. You can best bet a subset of the opposing team will push their close objectives, and oftentimes others on that team will swarm towards the center, which brings us to the next tip. Tip 2, the middle objectives usually decide games. In escalation, most matches are decided around the center objectives, so for this map, that's objective D. These objectives are usually where most players converge, where the most tickets are generated, and where momentum shifts occur. You don't want to ignore the peripheral objectives, but you need to ensure you keep a strong foothold in the middle, which transitions nicely into tip 3. Holding is sometimes better than capturing. This is a great lesson that many players don't think about. Sometimes the best play isn't grabbing the next objective, sometimes it's reinforcing the one your team just captured, especially if these are the central objectives or those close to the enemy at base. Tip 4, anticipate rotations. As you move around the map, a lot of escalation is predicting where players are going next. If a team loses an objective, where are they likely to rotate? If we capture this objective, what flag are they likely to attack next? This naturally ties into your map awareness and comes with practice, but for instance, if you're able to slyly capture the enemy's back objective, you better believe they're going to rotate quickly over to you, so be prepared. And tip 5, personal performance isn't everything. This round is actually a good example of how kills don't necessarily determine the outcome. I finished with 49 kills and 17 captures, but escalation is ultimately about maintaining control as a team of the different objectives that matter most, and you'll see that play out in this round. Okay, let's jump into some of the live gameplay. So you can see we started this round pretty solid. We captured a lot of those early objectives and were able to capture some of the central objectives like D, which, as I mentioned, can really help change the momentum, especially early on in this game. So now we're kind of on the offensive, and our kind of mindset here is let's kind of keep the pressure on. So we're going to push over to B to see if we can do that. And it's immediately contested. So we take out that first enemy, and then we're just going to sit quiet. Again, this is all about patience, as I've discussed in some of my other videos, and just taking it slow. So we're trying to stay out of sight, reduce our exposure, and we're taking audio cues. So we could hear someone coming around the corner, so we're pre-aiming. And we're going to just slightly expose our body here. We hear the revive, so we get 1, 2, and we're able to keep the pressure here on B. So we're losing numbers here, they're pushing hard, and there's not much you can do. What I try to do in those situations is just have some patience and hope that your teammates can kind of jump in and switch the momentum. Didn't happen there, but we put some good pressure on. And what that causes the other team to do is to have to focus on that objective. They don't want to lose that objective that's so close to their base, so a lot of times a big chunk of their team will actually push in. And what's interesting is even though I was one of only a few of our team members there pushing that pressure on, it caused this disruption of their flow. They all had to push back and try to help capture that objective. And in doing so, the rest of our team is now able to push on other objectives. So you can see how there's kind of an interplay there if you're able to kind of do these successful mini pushes. You may not actually capture the objective in the end, but it just takes away some of the enemy's resources while only expending a minimal amount of your own team's. And so now we're going to make sure we capture this back objective G. Again, this is coming to the tips of you really want to focus on the central objectives, but you don't want to lose sight of some of the peripheral ones, because in Escalation, those who have the most objectives at once, of course, are those that are where the score continues to tick up. So sometimes those are the easy ones to pick off and just add to your total objective count. Same with F here. Now I'm just kind of assessing the map. You can see we have the majority again, but we've lost the central objective. So now I'm kind of thinking let's push over more central, but taking it slow because these alleyways become highly contested. That of course comes with map knowledge and practice, so just play these maps enough, play them on different game modes, and you can start to learn where these bottlenecks are and where you should kind of be more cautious. So we get the smoke lay down, we can use that to our advantage to push up. Using audio cues here, you can hear the guy, those guys were just sitting in the room there. And again, this is all about body positioning, trying to minimize my exposure there. I'm going to take a different route, I didn't like that. See if we can sneak up behind him, and yep, he's so focused on the hallway, we get that one. And now you can see our team is pushed into D. So again, we weren't necessarily directly impacting that exact capture, but we were focusing on a subset of their team that was distracting them from focusing on the objective. So you can see how you can actually have a role without directly impacting the objective itself. And so now this is one of my other tips, which is sometimes it's good to just hold. So we captured and I was going to run away, but I could just feel and see on the mini-map there was a lot of push from the enemy team. So we're going to hang tight here. And you can see just like that we lost the numbers. So I'm going to hang tight and see if I can pick people off and see if we can keep control here of the central objective. And a lot of this again is just buying time, staying safe, hoping your team can come in and help support. So we're able to pick people off that we can see on the edges here and just try to get different angles. And you see just like that we're able to maintain control here of D. And so if you look on the upper screen, you can see we have all of the central objectives and we lost 2 of the peripheral ones. So their team's kind of focusing on the edges, but again, as Escalation starts to condense, we start to move towards those central objectives, and those become more and more crucial. So now you can see they're taking a pretty strong foothold on the edges, as I mentioned. So we're actually going to go out there and see if we can swing one of these. It seems like we had a pretty good footing on D, although you can see now it's getting captured. D will constantly go back and forth, which is why it's always important to kind of hold there. But as I mentioned earlier, you don't always want to hold. You need to balance rotation and holding. So if you lose all the peripheral objectives, you'll end up losing the match because they just have the numbers. So this is an interesting part of the match. We go up 2 points to none, and you would think we have this in the bag. This is an easy win. But as you'll see, there's still 15 minutes left of this video. It doesn't go our way, and we can start to break down why that happens. So I see on the mini-map there's someone kind of pushing over there in the building, so I'm just taking my time. So right now you can start to see my gameplay behavior starts to change. And, I don't have an explanation for it, but you can see that, I'm less focused on the objectives. I'm kind of hunkering down on these random alleyways, which doesn't really impact the match overall, especially in Escalation. So I'm going to try to push back over to D, but you see I kind of get distracted here. There's a lot of enemies on the edges. So you're getting kills, but it's not impacting the game. And now I'm kind of pinned down, guy knows I'm here. They're starting to push in. I'm just listening to audio cues here. Again, this is great for kills, but it's not impacting a match like Escalation. They end up getting me anyways. So I wasted a few minutes there, didn't impact the match at all. And now you can see the entire momentum has swung. They have D, they have 2 of the peripheral objectives. So we're gonna go back on here central to D and see if we can help swing this. Keeping an eye out on those other balconies. People like to sit there. Got a nice RPG snipe. Now I'm just trying to reduce the enemy numbers before I jump down in there. Here I'm just being patient. Let my health regen. No reason to run out. They know I'm up here. Our team's pushing D. They've switched the numbers. So now I'm just kind of giving oversight to the people that are down there, making sure no one's sneaking up on these balconies. Still have any impact on the actual objective without going in there. Okay, so now we've locked down this side of the map, and now you can see they have F and G. So at this point, it would be a good idea to kind of go on the offensive and kind of push that way. You can see I'm kind of battling where to go. You can see there's some contesting fights going on right here on the edge. A lot of our team's just kind of distracted here. And if you're not paying attention, what you'll start to notice is they're capturing E now. They were contesting D, just like that. And they have the majority of the objectives now. So I'm pushing over to F to apply some pressure. Our team's applying pressure. I'm going to take a high route just to kind of scope people out, see if I can pick anyone off. And he gets me. And so because of the way Escalation shrinks, right now, while Objective D is still generally a central objective, because E, F, and G are still in play, the actual center of the map kind of shifts. And almost E and F become central in a way, with D still obviously in play. But you can see now we've hyper-focused on D without paying attention to how the map has actually shifted. So the reality is we should start moving more towards the back, towards E, F, and G. And now you can see G goes off the map. They're able to get that next tick for that reason. They really controlled that back triangle of objectives. So my mindset here now is like, let's just see if we can break through here and try to capture E, switch the momentum a little bit. But they have a tank and they have quite the numbers just sitting here. I'm trying to be patient. There, we get a revive. I'm not talking as much about the gunplay and general gameplay strategy. I think I do that quite a bit in some of my other videos, and I'll talk about those again in the future. But feel free to ask questions in the comments, about how I determine patience and when to give up, when to wait for revives, those types of strategies. So here again, I was kind of caught in no man's land. I'm not really impacting the objective. I was hoping to try to pick off some of their team coming from their HQ, but nobody was really pushing that way, so it was kind of a waste of a life there. It didn't impact much, wasted a lot of time. But the reality is most of the gameplay hasn't really, or momentum hasn't really swapped too much. It's still pretty even here on this point. So again, we're kind of focusing back in on D. Central objectives now, though, are basically D and E, although I would say now the focus comes more on D. So we're going to try to hold and be patient here, try to get numbers again. A lot of times the enemies will show themselves, which actually helps. If you're just patient, they'll pop their heads out. You can use the minimap to your advantage. For instance, a tank just rolled in, we see that, so there's no point on jumping up and trying to pick people off. Let's just stay patient where we have cover. keep the numbers. And you can see how quickly they change on these central objectives. Just like that, we're up 5-1. And now we just wait. Put some pressure on that tank. I'm keeping an eye up on those balconies. I could tell they were kind of sneaking around there, just keeping an eye out. Again, that comes from map knowledge, just practice. And I think it's important if Escalation's not your game mode, but you prefer Breakthrough, the different choke points and bottlenecks change based off the game mode. That's probably self-explanatory, but for those of you who maybe don't play some of these game modes, the same choke points you might encounter on Breakthrough, for instance, will be completely different on Escalation in the way the map generally plays. For instance, the routes that tanks will take, or where jeeps are likely to appear from. So I was really trying to play the engineer class there. I was trying to offer some support for our own vehicles and try to keep the other ones at bay. And again, really just with the point of maintaining the momentum at D. And so we're in a bit of a stalemate now, and it really comes down to which team kind of constructs a good push simultaneously while having enough of the team holding back and holding the objectives at the same time. So right now I'm kind of playing a defensive game approach, and you'll see this doesn't really pan out in the end. We don't win here, so... And they had the numbers there. So you can see we're getting pushed on the minimap from both edges of D, and our team is largely playing defense. So we have a lot of numbers here holding the right side of objective D, and where we just came from, there are a lot of people holding the left. There's quite a few people holding the middle. So what that tells you is there's almost no one really pushing towards the other objectives, and the entire team is basically playing defense. So as you can see from how the score counts, when you're in this stalemate, both teams start accumulating points. And since they have the upper hand, of course, they'll score first. So that's not in our best interest. And somehow they were able to sneak behind and capture C, and they're also putting pressure on D. And you can see at the exact same time, we're not putting pressure on any of their objectives, E or F. So this is really where the momentum of this round starts to flip, and it can get out of hand really fast if you don't account for it. And at this point, I'm just, it's chaos. I'm playing defense. My head's on a swivel, and I can't get a footing here. So we want to reassess. I'm thinking we need to maintain C, so I'm going to spawn on our squad and see if we can flip this. We clearly have the numbers, and again, this is kind of the reverse of what we saw early in the round, where they pushed our C, which caused us to kind of push back, pull back, and make sure we capture this. So 11 of our people were just on C, and that detracted hugely from D. And now, just like that, we lost D, and they scored another point. So now we're down to 3 objectives, and they clearly have the upper hand right away to start. They have E and D. And when you get down to this final point where it's tied, that whoever maintains the objective straight into that final point really starts to get an upper hand fast if you don't flip it. And you can see that happening and taking place right now. So I'm just trying to find a route to take. It's just chaos everywhere. Down the main alley, they clearly are dominating with their vehicles. I'm trying to go down this, but you can tell there's a lot of fire coming in. So there's just not really an effective way to get back in this. This is probably where, if you're in a coordinated squad, it would be great to have someone as support, throw down a lot of smoke, and then go in with a few engineers. There are so many vehicles in there, you can't go in without any RPGs or rockets, so you definitely need that in combination. The issue our team's having is we're all kind of playing defensive for some reason, even though we started the match off so strong, including myself. So you can see our teammates here straight ahead trying to ease up But they really just have a strong footing, that other team, and everyone's kind of just holding, if you will. Get a nice tank kill, but again, doesn't really matter. I mean, it's good to get the tank off the map, but it's not really directly impacting an objective at this point. They still have a strong footing. Another tank just rolled in and took its place. And here I'm just accumulating kills, but again, doesn't have an impact here. As you'll see, their momentum is just completely swung. They're halfway to capturing the 3rd point here. Now I'm just trying to be patient just to get my health back, but we're basically running out of time. Terrible throw. Starting to choke. We're going to try to take a different route here. Our team was able to push back in and capture E, which was great. Now that allows us to put pressure on D because a lot of their team is going to push back to try to help and compensate for E. And so we're able to actually flip it here for a second. But you can see, yeah, a lot of their numbers are probably back at E. So we're going to go see if we can put some pressure on. They have some snipers looking down though, so it's going to be a little difficult. Right now though, we're just trying to buy time. So we have them numbers, and we just don't want them to push in. So we want to kind of hold these angles. Be perfect if I had a rocket there, but I used them already. So we're picking them off. It was working okay, but you'll notice they snuck behind us and put pressure on C. And so that was huge. Now a lot of our team is going to push back there, use a lot of resources to go compensate for C. But it'll be too much, too late. They have the numbers right now. And again, we're trying to hold this edge on C, which is important. Or on D, rather. But the fact that they're pushing from multiple angles now, it's going to be really hard to maintain here. Yeah, so they're probably going to push in here on the edge of D. It's good as we got a squad mate actually playing on the offensive here on E. But you can see now they're hitting D and C at the same time. So this is where it's going to get a little tricky here. We're going to have to make a push. Got lucky there, got that kill, stay alive. So now we're putting the pressure on. We halt their progress, which is huge. And now we have the numbers again. But we have a long way to catch up, so we're going to have to, keep a strong awareness now on which objectives are swinging and react fairly quickly here. So you can see the crazy numbers they have on D. They're able to push back into E, so we're kind of stuck, and they're pushing C at the same time. So as I said earlier, our team's probably going to put a lot of resources here on C. It's going to get distracted by D. The ideal situation here is we would take out those two guys on our own and capture C without expending too much resources, but you see we failed there, and that's going to allow the other team, to keep us requiring resources down there. So you can see at least 3 of our teammates down there trying to capture C, which is a big distraction. They have an incredible foothold on D, so we're not going to be able to break that. Our best bet right now would actually be to sneak around to E. But you can see what we do is we get hyper-focused here on D. Bunch of our teammates pinned down, bunch of people going down. And what ends up working for them is they start pushing us on the edges is here too as well, so we can't even really flank. So yeah, I hope this was useful. I tried to provide kind of my mindset in terms of general strategy for Escalation rather than focusing on the individual gameplay. You can see how much momentum can change in this game. And again, it's not all individual performance basis, and it's a lot of team understanding. This is where it can help to play in a squad. You can kind of coordinate your pushes and attacks. Sometimes it could be worth switching to support and throw down some smokes, and oftentimes that motivates people to push. So if you throw those down, right in front of an objective or down an alleyway, you'll notice that a lot of your teammates will then sprint through. So that could have been a good approach here to take. You can see we lose because, on some of the different momentum swings, we weren't able to counteract that quick enough, and they essentially just take back control. But in the end, it's a fairly close one. It's just, we went up so early in the game and still end up losing. So it's kind of an interesting one to walk through. Yeah, so that's going to do it for this one. I really appreciate all the support recently. And if there's any other topics or gameplay styles you want me to break down next, definitely let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Be sure to spread some positivity, and I'll see you in the next one.